He really likes to put me off his books, put me off him as an author. I don't like him as an author. I apologise, but we have a Colleen Hoover. It was kind of unreadable. It really does irritate me. Hi everyone, it's Sarah, and today I'm going to be doing my worst books of 2023. So if you've seen last week's video, I did my top 10 favourites of 2023, and I've decided to do the same again this week, but with my worst books. So there will be 10 books here. I don't think I have them in order. Let's put them in order. Okay, I have them somewhat in order. I'm going to start with the ones that aren't worst of the worst and then lead up to the worst of the worst. And then I'm going to finish with 2 DNFs because I only have 8 books here that I fully got through that I thought was worthy of mentioning. We're going to go straight into it and we're going to hope for the best. I do think there's some controversial books on this list too. I just want a disclaimer that if people love these books, that's fine, and I'm so happy for you. There's a lot of books on this list, like all of the books on this list I obviously wanted to enjoy because I picked them up. I wouldn't have picked them up if I thought I wouldn't like them. But there's some I'm more disappointed about than others. If you like these books, that's great. Everyone's opinions are different. Let's just get straight into it. First up, I'm going to start with The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. If you know me, you know that I do love Brandon Sanderson and I love his writing, but that doesn't mean every book works for me. And there's certain books that don't work for me that I can still appreciate, and I can get that they're just not for me. With The Way of Kings, I think this was a really slow build, and I mean, this is part 1. There's part 1 and part 2 in these editions. They've been like split in half. So I think these books are usually like over 1,000 pages long. I enjoyed the second half slightly more than the first half, but it was more like just how it ended. I was like, okay, yeah, that was more interesting. But throughout this full book, I found myself zoning out. And this is one of those books that I probably couldn't tell you much about. It's set in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere universe. It follows some main characters like Kaladin and Dalinar and Shallan. And Shallan was actually my favourite character to follow. When I wasn't following Shallan, I kept zoning out. Like, I was not interested. I tried my hardest to be interested in this, and I've actually tried to read this book twice now. I think I got through the first half twice, and then I've only read the second half once. But I thought initially it might have just been the wrong timing for me, but clearly not the case. This book just wasn't for me. It just felt really dry. I had no interest, and I guess this is why this is like at the bottom of the pile of my least favourites, because I don't hate this so much as some others. I don't have a reason to physically hate this. I was just left feeling really bored. I am going to try the second book in the series, which I think is Words of Radiance, because I've heard that it's more Shallan centered, and I'm going to see if I can get into it more that way. But if I can't get into that book, that'll be the end of the series for me. This is one of Sanderson's more loved and known series, so I'm really quite devastated it started out this way, but unfortunately, this just wasn't for me. Also, James is really not happy that that's on the list, so like I said, difference of opinions is absolutely fine. We live in the same house together. We love each other. Yet, he is absolutely devastated that this is making my worst of 2023 list. So, moving on from The Way of Kings, we're going on to A Clash of Kings. Maybe I should just stop reading books with a title with kings in it. Clearly not working for me. Again, if you've watched my favourites of 2023 video, you will have seen me talk about the first book in this series, which I absolutely love. And I mentioned that this book just wasn't for me. I'm not going to stay on this one for long. I think everyone knows A Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire series, and there was a TV show adaptation. Basically, that first book was very fantasy driven and I was all for it, and it's exactly what I wanted in a series. And then this second book turned more political. I was bored half to death. I'm hoping the rest of the series picks up. Unfortunately, this makes it to my worst of 2023. Did have some fun tabbing it though, so that's interesting. I have read this book twice as well, so I've given it a fair shot. There's certain books that I will read again because I think that maybe my opinion will have changed, and unfortunately this just hasn't happened this time around. Next up is The Push by Ashley or drain. I saw this everywhere, and because I've had kind of an iffy time with thrillers, I did want to pick this up and give this one a go because everyone was loving it, and I've been wanting to find more thrillers so I could fall back in love with the genre. Oh, and I forgot to mention the Way of Kings and the Clash of Kings were 2 stars. This was also a 2-star rating. It had promise, I believe. Like, initially when I first started it, I remember being intrigued and I liked the writing. This follows kind of a mother-daughter relationship, but I think there's a generational trauma of stuff happening with the mothers. At the start, it did seem like it was going to be a conversation of people who have kind of fell in the trap of having children, thinking that's what they wanted, and then ended up that wasn't what they wanted, and like figuring that out psychologically. But it wasn't that. It didn't give me that. I remember somewhere near the end I kind of just rolled my eyes. I know there was something happening that I can't say because it is spoiler, but there was something happening as well later on in the book that I was just like, is this really what it's gotten to? Yeah, this was just, it just fell flat for me, and I don't usually pick up thrillers to do with children or thrillers that are more like domestic because they don't work for me. So I guess I should just steer clear of them, even if they are really popular, because they're really not for me. If you've watched my favourites video, you will have seen Bleach was on there as one of my favourites, not just volume 1, but there's a lot of favourites in that manga series that I do enjoy. But I did mention that there's random segments in the series where it just goes off course. It doesn't follow the main story. We're following a character, I forgot his name, so I'll put his name on the screen. We're following that character. It's just very random, and I don't like him as a character, and I really hated this volume, and it kind of threw me a bit. I was scared to keep going with the manga because I was like, is this the turn we're taking? Is this what I have to keep expecting? Apparently that happens here and there in the series, but we're back on with the main plot. I've read up to volume 11 now, and I am back enjoying it, thankfully. I don't know why Kubo did that. I'm glad it didn't take such a turn that it just ruined the full series. Okay, next up I'm going to mention really quickly is Mile 81 by Stephen King. This is a short story and I really cannot remember what it's about, but I just want to throw some quotes out there. Stephen King really irritates me for his misogynistic ways, the way he speaks. I like to call them kingerisms. He does odd things throughout his book. There's some absolute masterpieces that he has worked on and he's produced, like 11/22/63. Spoiler, made it to my favourite lists. I'm just spoiling that whole video. Go watch it if you haven't already. Mile 81 was very Stephen King in the way that's not good. So there was a couple of quotes. I won't be able to say certain words because they're awful. And yeah, I'm gonna kind of just try and give you a gist of what he said. I'm just reading off my review here. So he says, grab her by the, she likes that. There was a quote that said, the little girl also kissed him, which was sort of nice, although it would have been nicer if she'd been a babe. And that's all I need to say. Don't pick it up. You don't need to know the story. It's not worth it, clearly. He really likes to put me off his books, put me off him as an author. I don't like him as an author. I get he does have masterpieces, he really does. I don't know how he goes from one extreme to the other. It's like nothing I've seen before in an author. But yeah, I don't think I'll be trying any more of his books. I have 2 more on my shelf that I haven't read yet, Under the Dome and Billy Summers. And I did temporarily DNF Billy Summers because I just wasn't getting into it. I am going to try it again another time and I want to try Under the Dome. But I believe they'll be my last ones. Any new releases he brings out, I have no interest in them. He has some really amazing classics, but yeah, there's just ones that are so different and so bad and like uses language like that that's just, it's uncalled for, that I can't respect. Let's have a look what the average rating is on this. I rated a 1 star. It's a 3.67, which is kind of low. I still don't think it's low enough. Next up, I apologise, but we have a Colleen Hoover. We have November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I have one more book that I own by her that I will try just because I own it, but after that I think I'm done with this author. There's a couple of books that I read that was like, they were good enough, they were entertaining enough, but I don't think the writing is strong, and I just don't think she's an author that appeals to me much at all. This has got to be the worst I've read by her, and this is the one that really put me off her. Initially I started it and I was really enjoying it, but I mean initially, like 50 pages, maybe less. There's a girl that she's a burn victim. She sat with her dad, I think, in a booth at a diner or something, and her dad is nagging her a bit to defend her and help her out. This boy comes over and pretends to be her boyfriend. I think like the dad's like nagging her to get out there, be confident again and stuff like that, but she feels like insecure and stuff with the scars and things she has resulting after the fire. This boy comes over, he's called Ben, and he saves the day. And then after that they decide to just meet up on November the 9th every year. I can't remember why that is. I think he's moving and they were like, oh, we'll just continue meeting on this day. But what was really bad about this is that Ben is very forceful. He like tells her like to wear, I think it's like a little black dress. He's like, wear that dress. Like she's uncomfortable, she's not confident, and he's just like, yeah, you're wearing it, like definitely for me, like you're gonna wear it and you're gonna show yourself off. And it's like, it's not even in a comfortable way, like it's not, you get it girl, you be confident, like I'm gonna big you up and make you feel comfortable. It's literally like, you will do this. There was a lot more that annoyed me. Yeah, it was terrible. Anyway, I think the message that was trying to be put across here was not done well at all. This actually has a 4.15 rating average on Goodreads. I forgot to mention, I have put this in order, but before I would say between The Push and Bleach. I would say after The Push, I would put A Haunting on the Hill next. So I'm sorry, this is out of order a little bit. A Haunting on the Hill, it's from the world of The Haunting on Hill House. I didn't like The Haunting on the Hill House, or whatever the main book is called, that classic by Shirley Jackson, but I did like the TV show adaptation, and I've been wanting to enjoy that type of story, and I was hoping that this new release of kind of being in that world would be more like a modern take on it, would be more entertaining. It comes before like November 9 because it wasn't so bad that it shouldn't have ever been written. It was kind of unreadable. I probably did a bad thing of listening to the audiobook because initially I thought it was quite like a good creepy setup to the story. I liked the audio format with it, and I was really happy that I chose that way of reading it. And then basically there's one character that just keeps singing, and honestly that's all I can remember about that book, because she just kept singing and it was so annoying to listen to as well. Oh, it was not a fun time, and I don't think all in all the story was that solid. I gave it a 2-star. That was a huge disappointment to me. I pre-ordered it and I had this gorgeous edition. It was such a letdown. The last one of the books that I fully read is maybe another controversial one, but also I've seen people hating on it more recently as well, so maybe not, is The Fourth Wing, or Fourth Wing, by Rebecca Yarros. This, honestly, I won't lie to you, I'm pretty sure I gave this a 4-star when I first finished it. There was bits in this book that I didn't like, hence it didn't get a 5-star. So when I finished it, I was like, that was an enjoyable enough ride. Like it was a fun read. The more I thought on it, the worse it got for me. The thing that I didn't like in it initially just kept putting the rating down more and more for me the more I thought about it. I want to say it's not a spoiler, but it might be, so I'll put a little spoiler warning here. So our main character, Violet, goes to college. She's training to fight. They all have to connect with dragons to move on, I guess. Like, they all have to have a dragon and connect with them. I think the dragons choose the person. I don't know, the dragon just gets the vibe. And there's this dragon that just hasn't like chose anyone in years, and he obviously chooses Violet. Yeah, and then my problem is with this is like known to be, I guess it's romantasy now, right? So it's fantasy with a little bit of steam, and I didn't think I was mad at that. I like romance in books. I like romance like trickled in there in my fantasy, but when it comes to hardcore romantasy, I don't think it's for me, and this was so cringeable. So the thing that I'm meant to be spoiling was that the dragons, there was 2 dragons that like had an intimate relationship, and when they started doing things, like the people who were connected to them could feel that, and it was like their feelings and stuff were connected, and their I guess their hormones in a way were reacting similarly. Yeah, that just, ugh. Like, does anyone else remember that? Is that my imagination? Because I haven't heard anyone mention that bit, and that's the bit that put me off massively. It wasn't great. It wasn't an amazing story. There's definitely better fantasy out there, but it was fun. It was entertaining. But because of that bit and a few other bits that I just didn't enjoy, it's ended up going straight down to a 2-star from a 4-star the more I thought about it. And I'm glad I did think on it, because now I'm not going to waste my time with the second book, which I've been watching someone's stories on Instagram, on my bookstagram, that has been reading the second book, and she's been putting spoilers up and all her information on how she feels about the second book, and I'm glad I haven't picked it up, honestly. But the dragon thing, like seriously, someone tell me I'm not imagining that, because that was weird. So that was like my least favourite of the ones that I actually completed. There is 2 that I've added on here that are DNFs, so we're gonna go to my DNFs. So my first one is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I hated this. I hated it so much. Obviously, I couldn't get through it. I was hoping to enjoy it, and I was just struggling. I was struggling so much. It's meant to be dark academia. It's Oxford, 1836. Centre of all knowledge and progress in the world. Its heart is Babel, Oxford University, prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, and it follows Robin Swift going to this university. And I thought it sounded perfect. I love dark academia. I love a bit of prestigious writing and prestigious characters. I saw it on sale on Amazon and had to get it, so I'm glad I didn't spend that much on it. I think I spent like £5 or £8, something like that. And it reads like a history book. Like the author is trying to teach me something, and I didn't want that. Like, it's still fiction. I wanted to be enjoying what I'm reading and not feel like I'm being taught a lesson. Yeah, so I think that sums it up fully how I felt about this book going into it, and I just couldn't get past the writing, and I wasn't drawn enough to the character or the plot to carry on and try and scrabble through this. And my last book, and this one actually really, like, the more I think about it, the more it annoys me, is Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, a very popular fantasy series, the Malazan series, that everyone says that you have to be patient with, that it's a very difficult book, it's a very difficult series to get into. You won't understand much going into it, all this, right? I was prepared for that. I was so prepared for it. I was so ready. At the time, I was reading high epic fantasy books, and I was so ready to be confused and struggle learning this world. My problem is with this is the reason it's so hard to get into is that the author literally gives you no explanation. So it's not that it's such a complex world and it's so high-end that it's just harder to get your head round the magic system, and you might have to read it a few times before you learn these things fully, because there's so much to learn. That isn't the case. Like, he literally doesn't explain what is going on. He doesn't explain his world. I literally cannot tell you what this book is about, because whilst I was reading it, I literally didn't have a clue. Like, I couldn't tell you what was happening because I had no explanation. I like, you're creating a big, huge, epic fantasy world that is in your brain, and you're not telling your readers on paper what that consists of. You're not telling them your ideas. You're just like, here, we're doing this. We're in this world. This is what's happening. That drives me insane. Like, the more and more that I've thought about this book, and I've kept it because I do want to try it again, and I don't know why, but the more I've thought about it, the more I think maybe I'm just not going to try it again, because that factor alone annoys the life out of me. Like, I know I'm not going to go into this book and just have a hard time learning. I'm going to go into this book and I have to just keep reading the words without understanding anything, because the author has given me nothing. It really does irritate me. I just couldn't believe that. Like, no one has said that much, that the author literally gives you nothing, by the way, but go into it and good luck. It's just such a hard world to get into. It's really confusing, and it's like, I've had no why, and that is the why. It's a lot, and I just don't know if this would ever be a fun experience to read if I have to try so hard to get any concept. Like, I was reading chapter summaries too. I don't understand. I really don't understand. I did like the actual like writing. There was atmosphere there, and I liked that part of it. Maybe I'll read something else that he's wrote if he actually wants to give me a hand and let me know what he's talking about. And maybe I will, maybe one day I will pick this up again. Right now I'm just angry at it. And if I come back and give this a 5-star one year, like, just ignore this. But right now I'm angry. There is a couple more DNFs that I would have loved to talk about, but I'm trying to keep this just to 10. I was also thinking about maybe doing a DNFs video, but I just think for now, I don't love the idea of it. But those are my like raw feelings and emotions towards these books. Unfortunately, they didn't work out for me. And a lot of these are quite popular, so they're also the reason that I want to try and start looking at books that are just interesting to me, for me, not because I've seen them on the internet. I'll still be pulled in by the internet and by what other people are loving and reading, but I do want to actively try more to find some books that are in my interests without seeing them just flying all over the internet, because it lets me down more than I would like to admit. But I have found some amazing ones as well that I would never have picked up if it wasn't for the people on the internet. So I'm not gonna like just stop doing it. I just want to actively try and find more in my taste. They're my initial thoughts on the books that I didn't enjoy in 2023. Let me know what was on your list of worst books of 2023. Is there any that are quite controversial? Was there any on this list? Let me know, leave a comment below, and like and subscribe if you haven't already and you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye!